Don't think we're going to out-meme Donald Trump or that we're going to beat him on X. I think it's going to be ultimately in the courts and in delivering better outcomes and getting people to actually vote with their feet and want to come back to blue states.
You sort of tweaked Gavin Newsom, the governor, for being almost like Trump obsessed. Like, shouldn't we be?
I understand what he's doing. He's holding a mirror up to Donald Trump, who is a threat to our democracy. And I disagree with many of his policies. I also firmly believe that our failure to solve our biggest problems has given the MAGA movement a tremendous amount of ammunition. It's a big part of what's giving oxygen to this movement, and the best resistance is delivering results. So we are now paying more to import dirtier fuel from farther away, and we've lost all the jobs and tax base from that industry in the meantime. I tend to think that there's a difference by an order of magnitude or two between waste and fraud and abuse. Fraud and abuse happen, and they're very noteworthy, and they should never happen, and we should always punish them and root them out and try to prevent them. But it's waste and inefficiency that is the bigger issue.
Mahan, mayor of San Jose, and I go back a long time. I think I was at an election party he threw when Trump was first elected, and it was a very sad affair. He's raised money now to run for governor of California from some people I know well. Gary Tan of Y Combinator, Joe Lonsdale, the Palantir co-founder. Mahan and I share a lot of sympathies. We somewhat believe in tech, somewhat believe in what's going on in AI. I guess both make a lot of our money from the tech set, but on the other hand, are principled Democrats with our own independent ideas. And so he and I had an honest conversation. I think I pushed him on a lot of things. He's competing for governor in a unique primary environment. It's the so-called jungle primary. So he can try and pick up some Republican voters. Obviously that's difficult in a world where you have to pick a team. Man has a tall hill to climb to win this race. I think he's definitely behind, but a fascinating candidate that says a lot about what's happening in tech and American politics today. I'm Eric Newcomer. This is the Newcomer Podcast. Mahan, mayor of San Jose, candidate for governor of California. We've known each. It's been a while, but we met back in your brigade days before you were mayor. Not surprised to see you running for governor. I believe back then even I was like, that seems
you
like
saw this coming.
Yeah. I was like, believable. So thank you for coming on the Newcomer Podcast.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. It's good to see you again after all these years.
Yeah. So just start with the mission statement of the campaign. You know, it's a jungle primary. It's going to be sort of a brawl to get to be one of the top two candidates. What is your message for people?
Yeah, and I jumped in just a few weeks ago. I think it's a wide open race still. And my core argument is that we need to fix California. We need to fix it for the 40 million people who live there. Also, nationally, what happens in California matters. And frankly, I think that our inability to address housing costs, energy costs, homelessness, crime, addiction issues have given Trump and the MAGA movement the best ammunition imaginable. And so I want to fix our problems for my family, my neighbors, all of our fellow Californians. I also think there's a bigger context here. I'm worried about this rising populism on the right and now on the left. And you sort of see folks turning to really easy answers, more authoritarianism or more socialist policies that ultimately I just don't think are going to work in practice or really be what America's all about and what actually makes us great. And so I'm worried, I'm worried.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you subscribe to the abundance message? Because there's clearly echoes of that. You're saying it a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a holistic worldview that solves everything. I've spent a lot of time working on homelessness, crime, addiction, untreated mental illness, and is there an abundance message there? Maybe. There's also just accountability. Sometimes you have to intervene, and there's a whole interesting conversation about civil liberties that's sort of independent of the abundance conversation. But the basic notion that we have made government too slow, too bureaucratic, we create a lot of cost around the things we most want, like housing and clean energy, I think is absolutely true. High-speed rail being the sort of poster child for everything that's wrong with the progressive governance model today.
That's why has California high-speed rail failed?
Yeah.
It's so hard to imagine. It's like, let's just throw more money at it and someday it will work. I think we're both of the world where we desperately want it to work. We want these beautiful, you know, Japan-style trains running around. But like, why can't America deliver on it?
Yeah, and it's pretty stark when you look at during the 20 years where we've spent $20 billion and not delivered a train. China's built over 10,000. They may now be at 20,000 miles of high-speed rail connecting their entire country. I mean, and that's not an entirely fair comparison, but at the end of the day, people care about outcomes. And I think that's part of why we're seeing this more authoritarian impulse to this turn to a strong man, is that people just want stuff to happen. It's the, you know, Governor Shapiro get shit done mindset, right, that we really need. So why, you know, I think it largely comes down to the fact that this project was caught up in years of environmental review and clearance, years of litigation, has taken forever to assemble all of the pieces legally, environmentally, just all of the regulatory compliance takes years. California has made it. I think the country already suffers from the litigiousness around environmental review, NEPA as well as our California version of that, CEQA. But we're especially bad in California. You can have housing projects that make so much sense. You have the general plan where the public's already weighed in. You've said this surface parking lot in a downtown next to transit obviously should be high-rise residential, and you can still take 18 to 24 months to get through the environmental review process, and you can still get sued for it. It's crazy.
It's amazing, you know, as a millennial to realize that being a progressive in sort of the previous generation was some of this sort of Sierra Club, like we want green in that. We want like a nice park with a sort of limited scope neighborhood, and it's like that it doesn't match with what I guess progressivism means to my generation.
I think that's absolutely right. I think we go through cycles and we have to keep updating the operating system, if you will. I think we went from early progressivism 100 years ago, where there was actually a trust in big institutions to solve society's biggest problems, and you ultimately saw the height of that in the New Deal, where it was like we need government to be extremely active and robust. And coming out of that in World War II, there was a lot of trust in government and expertise and big bureaucracies. And then I think much of kind of leading toward when around the time we were born and up till today was the disintegration of that model, and progressives taking a very different approach, largely the environmental movement, but just sort of the rights-based, very litigious approach to protecting individuals from big government and big business. But we've unintentionally, I think, hobbled government, and we're no longer able to move quickly and efficiently and do big things. And now and I mean, obviously this is being covered by a lot of folks like Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson and others, but I think we're now sort of grappling with what is the next version, what's the next operating system need to look like?
Can you achieve, if you're governor of California, you be able to achieve great things through government, or is it about clearing the way for businesses and others to achieve great things? Like, is there a way to get the actual humans working for government, I don't know, to build things, deliver things more effectively, or it's just like government's not always best positioned to solve these big problems?
It's a great question. I do think you have to take it case by case. I would not simply rely on the private sector to magically fix education or our transportation systems or energy. I mean, there's some big complicated systems that are largely what you might call public goods, where government just needs to do better. We need to use technology to deliver better services. A small example of this is in San Jose. We've been using an AI-powered tool. There's a startup called Light that has helped us to speed up all of our public bus routes. So buses across the city of San Jose in the last, call it 18 months, have become 20% faster on average through just this very subtle synchronization of lights. And that's
it's hard not to hear this without the direct sort of Mamdani contrast, right? He's promising free buses. You're like, we can make buses 20% faster, which is probably more important in some ways.
Make them better.
Right.
Yeah. People pay for things.
But one thing goes viral and the other does not.
Yeah, no, you're right. The kind of more technical, competence-based approach is not always the most viral. It doesn't always make the headlines. But I do believe, people pay for things that they value. And if you're going to pay $20 for an Uber ride, you should be willing to pay $2 or $3 for a bus ride. But it can't take 5 times longer. Like we need to speed it up and provide a great service. But back to your bigger question, I do think there are areas where the answer is to pull back some of the robustness of the public sector. I think on housing, to some extent energy. I'll give you another example on energy that will probably not win me any friends in the environmental movement. And I consider myself a lifelong environmentalist, very big on open space, love being outdoors and hiking and camping and all that good stuff. We, though, have been so single-minded about our support for clean energy, and we have so aggressively regulated the oil and gas industry that we have pushed refineries, most of the refineries that are just regulated to be the cleanest, best run refineries in the world. We have pushed them out of California, but we're still using gas. So we are now paying more to import dirtier fuel from farther away, and we've lost all the jobs and tax base from that industry in the meantime. But we're still using it, burning it. We've just kind of killed the economics of it, and it's actually producing more emissions. And it's just sort of like good intentions gone awry in an overly regulated state.
I think it was John Arnold, the philanthropist and billionaire, said the other day, like, there are a set of states, like Texas, where he lives, they feel like they're competing for people to come and set up businesses. And then there are states like California that feel like, we don't need you. Like, the billionaire tax proposal, I guess, being the most prominent. Now, that's obviously not like Gavin Newsom's idea necessarily. Or what is your sense of the political support for this billionaire tax? You've obviously been opposed to it. And what's your read on like the seriousness of it for California?
Yeah, it's a very real risk. Governor Newsom's opposed to it as well. But most of the Democratic leadership in the state has either supported it or stayed pretty silent on it. I think the governor and I have been two of the only more prominent Democrats in the state to say this is a bad idea. And it's not because we are worried about protecting billionaires from taxation or don't believe in progressive taxation. I think the wealthiest amongst us should absolutely pay substantially into the public system to continue the prosperity, the infrastructure, all of the things that make the platform on which their prosperity was created. But this is going to backfire if it passes, and I think it
is backfiring
already. It already has. You're right.
Google co-founders are fleeing the state.
That's right. We've seen over $1 trillion of capital flight, to your point. I just saw a projection the other day. There was a debate at Stanford, and out of that, there was this analysis that showed that we're likely to lose $25 billion per year. That's recurring revenue. This proposal supposedly is a one-time tax that will generate $100 billion. At this point, maybe it would generate 50 because we've already lost so much wealth, and that would be one time. It may have cost us $25 billion per year in revenue. Nobody really knows yet. I think it will be defeated. A lot of damage has been done. As you, I'm sure, know, and your listeners know, there are 12 European countries that have tried wealth taxes at the national level, not the subnational level, and they've mostly all rolled them back. They've seen their tax base shrink. It's just not a smart way.
And of course, some of the reason the tech industry in particular is going ballistic is sort of the potential for unrealized gains being taxed. And startups are all about having these on paper highly valued companies that, it's like if you actually had to cash it out.
Come up with the money.
Right.
You just
sort of a hope and a dream. Like someday it will maybe be worth that, but I don't have that money today.
That's right.
On the flip side of this, like, we don't need a larger tax base. California already has so much money. I mean, a lot of that money is going to state health care, right? I think sometimes when I see sort of criticism about the size of government from the left, and you sort of saw this with Doge on the federal level, where Elon's crew said, we're going to save so much money by cutting federal workers, which I think, they did cut a bunch of federal workers, but they didn't balance the budget because so much of the spending is still in healthcare and other things that people love about government.
Right. You're absolutely right. In California, the two biggest areas of expenditure by far are healthcare and education. And I think the right approach is to get more value for the dollars we're spending. Now, that may involve cutting certain programs or staffing within that larger bucket of healthcare provision or education, we may find that we need to dramatically reallocate how we're spending the dollars, but you're very unlikely to find the political support, nor would it necessarily be good for society to reduce the spend within education and healthcare. I think 50% of healthcare spends in the last 5 years of life, and it's people choosing to want better end of life care. Now, can we do more prevention and reduce chronic illness and all of that? Yes. But I think the real focus needs to be on how we get more value per dollar spent.
So it is saving in some of the health spending areas.
I think it's saving, but it's really just optimizing the spend. I think in healthcare, for example, I would like to see less of the spend on managing chronic illness and more on upfront prevention. We also spend a lot of our healthcare dollars within a very expensive and inefficient hospital system versus providing more accessible clinics and leveraging the capacity of nurse practitioners who are capable of doing a whole lot more than they are often allowed to do per their license or local regulations. So there are ways to actually offer more care, higher quality care, more preventative care to more people in more places with the same amount of spending. So it's more about the inefficiency of the spending. When there's this discussion of waste, fraud, and abuse, I tend to think that there's a difference by an order of magnitude or two between waste and fraud and abuse. Fraud and abuse happen, and they're very noteworthy, and they should never happen, and we should always punish them and root them out and try to prevent them. But it's waste and inefficiency that is the bigger issue. We spend a lot of money without knowing if it's actually performing, if it's delivering the outcome that we want.
Do you think Doge? Was there anything valuable that came out of that?
Well, I think it started an important conversation about waste in government and how to do things better. I think where Doge really went off the rails was in seemingly taking joy in firing public servants, many of whom, most of whom had done nothing wrong and were just very committed, genuinely committed to the mission of the agency where they worked.
Right. It seems like some of the best among us, like who had developed specialties over many years.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, especially sort of the, foreign aid stuff, the malice about people who are trying to help other people. I don't understand.
Or the different roles in different science, scientific fields, doing research, long-term research that may be valuable. It seemed like it was attacking the people, not the problem of inefficient spending. Let me try to make this more concrete. In San Jose, we have, as with all governments, limited resources for our different priorities. One of our priorities is ending homelessness. We spend somewhere between $50 and $100 million a year, depending on revenue. It's a volatile revenue source, but we spend $50 to $100 million a year on tackling homelessness and housing issues. When I came into the mayor's office a little over 3 years ago, we were spending most of that money building brand new apartments for people. And for those who got those apartments, it was a great solution. They remained off the streets and their outcomes were much better. The problem was the math just didn't show any path to scalability. It's $1 million a door, 6 years to build this apartment. We've got thousands of people living outside. So I said, there's a much more optimal way of spending these limited dollars given the magnitude of the problem and the timeline that we have, which is like, we need to solve this today because
people expect it like day one.
Yeah, people are dying on the streets. I mean,
Right.
a couple hundred people a year die on our streets. So we shifted the dollars toward buying and fixing up old motels, buying prefabricated modular units and putting these sleeping cabins, if you will, on public land. We brought outreach in-house, reduced the number of people, but improved the quality and actually had something to offer people because we had built shelter. We've put money into prevention and slowed the inflow into homelessness. Same amount of money, but we've reduced the number of human beings living outside in tent encampments by about a third in just the last few years. And with the next count, we will, for the first time, have a majority of people who are homeless in San Jose living indoors, not outdoors, which is qualitatively a completely different type of homelessness than having people literally wallowing in misery in a tent encampment and dying of overdose down in the creek. I mean, it's a totally different situation. And we didn't have to raise taxes to do it. We just had to think differently and be willing to reprogram our dollars.
The tech industry is very enthusiastic about your campaign. I think from Gary Tan to Joe Lonsdale are back in? Like, what do you think is like getting them excited about your candidacy?
More than anything, I think it's that being the mayor of the capital of Silicon Valley.
You've gotten to meet them. You know that.
I know. I know the tech world well. Obviously, I spent a decade working in it, in the civic tech space, as you know, with causes on Facebook and early philanthropy.
Right. I was saying, I think perhaps the last time we ran into each other, though I might have been somewhat intoxicated, was when Trump beat Hillary Clinton. I think you guys had a party in San Francisco.
2016.
I was sort of like at a wandering day, night, and I wound up at that party. It was like, the saddest set of people in San Francisco.
Wild.
So it was a really cultural turning point where you're telling me, I don't know if I can fact check this either. You sort of think you saw the Trump thing coming from...
So we had a map on Brigade's website. And Brigade, just for your listeners' benefit, was, I would analogize it to a LinkedIn, but for your civic or political identity. We hooked into the voter file. We allowed you to claim your voter record and then showed you all of your representatives, who else lived in your district or districts, depending on which level of government, and allowed you to basically organize with other voters. You could kind of put your votes together around issues you cared about and support candidates. And this was 10 years ago. We had a map, and it was much more red than other maps. And I don't think our map was particularly accurate, but what we did see was this crossover behavior of older, middle-aged and older voters, white voters in the Midwest, lower propensity voters who had registered Democratic, but told us they were going to vote for Trump, or had voted for Obama and told us they were going to vote for Trump. And it was just so interesting to pick up on this trend of people who were telling us that they were all for Trump, but none of the previous data about their behavior or their registration, their status as a voter would have led us to predict that. And so we sort of saw that coming. And on election night, I mean, the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and others literally had reporters call and be like, what did you guys see in your data? Like, what did you guys know that we didn't know? Because we were kind of, dismissed going into that race as like, oh, there's that weird app over there that seems to have been taken over by Trump supporters. And we were like, no, not really. It was really interesting.
Do you, from that experience, like any validity to election denial claims, or what's your set, like the SAVE Act and everything?
We did not get any indication of, you're talking about like voter fraud.
Yeah, whether voter fraud is something, sort of middle of the road sort of person.
Yeah, our app didn't pick up any of.
And you don't think there's like any...
I don't think it is a rampant issue. I do think that building trust in the process is really important, and whether the claims are legitimate or not, or the scale is significant enough to matter, the notion that there should be some identity verification, some sort of voter ID or some safeguards beyond what we have today, I think is reasonable, because you now have half the country doubting if our elections have the integrity that they need to have. So for better or worse, we're kind of at a point where I do think we need to address this issue.
The SAFE Act seems like if that passed, it would give the federal government under Trump a lot of control over the election.
Yeah, that makes me very nervous. There's a conversation in California right now about voter ID, which I think 70 to 80% of people support the notion that if you've got to use ID to buy alcohol or to buy a car or a gun or any other thing, and you've got to carry your ID with you as a driver and to get into a bar or whatnot, there ought to be some form of identity verification. It's still you go in.
But on everything else, you're like, oh, we need to be pragmatic and sort of tell people the truth. And I just think this voter ID thing, there's just not that much fraud.
No, I agree.
It's too hard to commit the fraud at the level they want. Like, you have to go, you say your address. Like, it's just like, it'd be a lot of work.
But I don't think that's the point, really, in the sense that you're right. I totally agree with you. And yet, the democracy is based on trust. And if half the country is believing that our elections aren't secure and don't have integrity and they shouldn't trust the results if they don't like the outcome, that's a problem for us as Democrats, whether we like it or not. And we can do the very academic and classically Democratic thing and try to show them a bunch of data and explain, oh no, don't worry, it's a rounding error. It's probably never changed the outcome of an election. Although you'd be surprised how many down ballot elections are decided by a few votes. But you can try to explain to people that they're wrong, or you can take a common sense action that, I just don't buy that it is an impossibility for us to give people 3 or 4 different ways to have an extra layer of protection where they show up and show a driver's license or a passport or something.
So you right now you represent San Jose, which is tech, ground zero, the hometown. Like, what is your view of, now that you're campaigning, of the average Californian's view of like the tech industry right now?
Well, there's a lot of skepticism, and I understand that. There's the skepticism of high housing costs that I don't think it's fair to completely blame tech for, but the truth is we've created jobs at a much faster rate than we've built housing. I see that as a public policy failure first and foremost, but a lot of people say, well, if it wasn't for all these tech companies and all these high-paying jobs, our housing prices wouldn't be as high as they are, and there's some truth in that. I don't think the answer is to get rid of the industry. I think it's to build housing, to be clear. But there's also a lot of fear that AI is going to destroy jobs and massively displace workers. Ironically, it may be those higher paid white collar jobs that start getting automated faster than others. Yeah,
let's double down on that. It's mystifying right now. You have, Alex Karp at Palantir going around sort of bragging that, the blue collar worker is going to benefit. And it's sort of, he literally said, it's like the white women who vote Democrat, they're the ones that are going to get screwed. He specifically said something about women. I don't know who are the Democratic base. But anyway, we don't need to get into Karp specifically. But there's definitely this sense from, I think it's become sort of a right-wing tech talking point that, white-collar workers get screwed. And the plumber, like, nothing better to be a plumber. But the flip side of that is, like, nothing better to be the owner of an AI company. Like, the person on the top, maybe, all their coders running around are about to get screwed. But this technology is still going to be controlled by white collar shape rotator or whatever, but like not the plumber or I don't know.
Totally.
What do you worry about sort of the tech industry having more control over what our lives look like if they have this powerful technology outside of government?
So when I think about AI, I think about all of the capability. First, I think about the capabilities that we can leverage to make our lives better. And I think about that primarily through the lens of public sector services. We've sped up our buses. We've improved language translation. We're saving.
It's amazing on language translation that would have been an insane, like we would have been like mind boggled. And then we're like, oh, great. Yeah, I did that.
Actually, it's like really easy. It's shocking.
Right. We use that in
just
government?
A couple of years ago, we were paying people for the largest languages represented in our city. We're an incredibly diverse city. San Jose is 40% foreign born. Over 50% of people speak a language other than English at home. And we would pay human beings who would not always even show up because they're humans to do translation in real time in Spanish, Vietnamese, sometimes Mandarin. That was about all we could afford and or find. But people speak dozens of languages in our community. Now, with an app, you can scan a QR code and in dozens of languages with really high precision at a very low cost at all public meetings, you can be on your phone and see true real-time language translation. It's incredible. And you can come up and speak in your native language and we can all see on our screens what you're saying in real time. In
amazing.
Flawless English.
You're ticking through things that sort of AI can deliver.
So when it comes to AI, you asked a pretty profound question about the concentration of power and wealth in tech and what does that mean? I was saying I really have focused on how to apply it to public services to make them better. We've also created an AI upskilling curriculum for our workforce. And our view is that these tools should not be displacing city workers. They should be enhancing their productivity, making their jobs more interesting and allowing these jobs to evolve naturally. But we're not trying to get rid of city workers. We're trying to help them have more satisfying and impactful jobs. And so we've taken that mission very seriously in San Jose. On the bigger, more existential issue, I mean, look, I think tech has to be regulated. I think the big question is exactly how to do that. It's such an evolving space. What is model transparency? I mean, this is your world much more than mine, but what levels of transparency? When do you need a human in the loop? I mean, these are big questions, and I'm certainly trying to keep up to speed on them and weigh the pros and cons. I don't want to prematurely regulate and push an industry out of California so that others get all of the job growth, high-paying jobs, the economic impact, and then it happens to us. I'd rather keep tech in California to the extent that we can, where we create the rules of the road and shape it for societal good to the extent that we can. On the concentration of wealth,
it's not just wealth; it's sort of power, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Mark Zuckerberg it's not just that he's wealthy; it's that he controls Facebook, which you obviously interacted with your work. I mean. And I sometimes they're good stewards. I've been a champion of some, like Anthropic. I think I'm glad they're taking a principled approach, and that requires a little bit of centrality. So that's part of the American experiment that companies get to compete with each other and build their sort of mini totalitarian regimes within their company. But I don't know. It's a tough question.
It is, and I think it depends, where you want to go with this. But if it's there's the wealth piece that has become very front and center because of the wealth tax in California. I think the answer there is to close a half dozen other tax loopholes at the federal level that are much more impactful, fairer, and have fewer unintended consequences. On the regulatory environment,
you support I feel like if people can get loans based on their wealth,
that's the lowest hanging fruit.
It's just insane. That's what allows billionaires to be flush. They just get loans
against unrealized assets, which becomes a loophole, a way of not paying on your capital gains. You're right. There needs to be some sort of trigger where at a certain level of borrowing or time duration, it's counted as a realized gain and you have to pay the tax on it. And if you have to liquidate, so be it, because you're borrowing so much that you're effectively realizing the gain. Right. I know that's very wonky.
So federal reforms on some of the tax
I think on the tax code, you really need to go to the federal level. California already has the second highest overall tax burden, the most progressive tax structure. In any given year, the top 1% of our income earners in the state contribute 40 to 50% of the revenue. So we can try to be a little more progressive, but at some point you are going to kill the golden goose. And I think we're getting close. We're seeing billionaires literally move out of state. And I don't think we need to push that anymore. We've increased spending in California at the state level by 75%, equivalent to $150 billion a year, more over 6 years ago. And if you ask Californians what's gotten better, they'd have a hard time giving you much of a list. And that's not an indictment of anyone in particular. I think it is a systemic problem. I think that we are incredibly bureaucratic and inefficient. We have a system that's hard to reform because there are highly organized interests, corporate, labor, and otherwise in Sacramento that just will try to block any meaningful change. And that's the environment that has led us to increase spending massively and not really see much in the way of measurable improvement.
I know there's a difference between, on this question, we're going to talk about Trump for a second. And I'm acknowledging that there's sort of a difference between what you want thematically about your campaign and sort of your level of upsetness. And so I guess I want to ask about that. You sort of tweaked Gavin Newsom, the governor, the current governor, for, I don't know, being almost like Trump obsessed. Shouldn't we be? Isn't it disturbing what he's doing to the country? If you're running for good governance, on the corporate side, he's picking favorites, helping some of your sort of California companies deciding which ones, can own studios and which ones can't. Aren't you sort of deeply troubled by some of the stuff he's doing?
I'm deeply troubled by a lot of the stuff he's doing. Starting with how he's treating our immigrant neighbors. San Jose's an incredibly diverse city, and we've got folks who have been living and working and contributing in our city, our community for decades, who are living in fear, scared to leave their homes. They have children who are U.S. citizens. We are long past the time that we should have come to the parties should have come to some bargain here over, yes, a secure border and orderly, lawful immigration, but with a pathway to at least some form of legal status for folks who are here and are otherwise trying to contribute and play by the rules. So immigration's kind of top of my list. General disregard for rule of law, tariffs. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm deeply concerned. My disagreements with Governor Newsom over the last few years have generally been very focused on specific challenges we're facing at the city level. Remember, I'm the mayor of a city in a big state. And my argument has been, we need our governor leading the charge locally. And I know he's got his eyes set elsewhere, which, is his prerogative. But we need our governor driving change at the local level, because we cannot address homelessness, crime, high cost of housing, and energy alone at the city level. We are downstream of so many state policies and spending decisions. On homelessness and crime, we hold maybe half of the answers, but if the governor and the state legislature don't hold the counties accountable, and California counties are extremely powerful, a lot of resources, a lot of very broad jurisdiction over the criminal justice system, behavioral health. If we don't get our counties aligned around solutions, we get blamed. I mean, look, the mayors are accountable. I go to the grocery store and it takes me 2 hours to get through the grocery store because people are angry and they want to tell me about all the problems.
And you can't be like, well, the county does that.
I'm like, well, the county should do this and the state has this law and if only the legislature would do that. So look, the governor and I have disagreed on a few pretty high profile things. Prop 36, which was a criminal justice reform issue, sober living environments. And my argument has been, yes, I understand what he's doing. He's holding a mirror up to Donald Trump, who is a threat to our democracy. And I disagree with many of his policies. I also firmly believe that our failure to solve our biggest problems in the country's largest and most prominent state has given the MAGA movement a tremendous amount of ammunition. It's a big part of what's giving oxygen to this movement. And the best resistance is delivering results on the issues that matter to people.
But there are norms. Do you say, to these CEOs giving you money, have more of a backbone? It's just, I just feel like
to be perfectly honest, I don't spend a lot of time with tech CEOs, but I don't. I used to.
They mail you a check and say, he's our mayor.
Well, first of all, most people don't realize this. San Jose is the home of the workforce of tech. Right. We don't have a lot of tech CEOs who live in San Jose. They live up in, the fancy, Palo Alto and Atherton and maybe up in San Francisco. We're a working city. We're the, the engineers and the designers and the marketing folks and whatnot. They live in San Jose. Those are my neighbors. And they're excited about my campaign because they see how much progress we've made in San Jose by bringing this to be fair, a cultural element of tech. The thing that I've done differently in City Hall over the last 3+ years is bring a performance management mindset into government. I came in and was like, the failure mode here is we're trying to be everything to everyone and it's not working. Let's pick no more than 5 things. Let's be focused. Let's set actual goals. Let's do the really uncomfortable thing of publishing them on the city website. Let's create some dashboards. Let's track the dollars we're spending, the staff time we're allocating. Let's measure performance. Let's publish our performance every 90 days. Let's look at it and reflect on it. And let's start to create a feedback loop and be a little more iterative so that every 90 days to 1 year, which is every 12 months, we do our budget cycle, we can make adjustments and say, well, we're spending money here, but it's not actually leading to any measurable improvement, so maybe we need to change it. That's been the unlock for us. And we've led the state in reducing homelessness, reducing crime, reducing blight, speeding up permitting. We've got thousands of new homes under construction. It's been bringing focus and performance management to City Hall, which is something that I get really excited about. And maybe in San Jose, you can, get constituents excited about.
And I appreciate that. And I think that is sort of, you've enumerated a lot of the virtues of the tech industry and how they do business. How do we get some of the corruption out of government? I mean, it's funny. I feel like it's been the right who's been railing about corruption in government. So I feel right wing saying it, but like some of the crypto stuff the Trump administration is doing, how they want executives to treat them. I mean, it is the biggest public graft of like all time. If we weren't dragged into 500 different issues every day, this would be a huge one. And it matters, as a business writer, because I'm trying to hold people, there are norms of business, and it's like there are expectations of what you're supposed to do. And if we descend as America into a culture where it's like, I've got to get mine, and like, you're a sucker if you don't do X, Y, Z, like that's going to be like the death of America. And so I don't know, do you have any ideas on what we can do to regain a culture of honest dealing in business, even as the president sort of begs people to be dishonest?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges really flows from the Citizens United notion that your political spending is simply speech and should be unlimited, and the disclosure piece is important, it's valuable, but it's sort of insufficient. The dynamic, and I'm much more familiar with what happens within California because I've been serving at the city level and thinking about counties and how we interface with our state government.
But these are Californian businesses that I'm worried about.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm just saying I can give you I imagine it's the same at the federal level. I'm just not. I don't spend time in Washington, but I've been maybe twice since I got elected mayor. But I can tell you mechanistically that the failure mode and the form of corruption, if you will, is not as straightforward as you might think. But it's effectively, there's a policy status quo that's in place, or maybe there's been a recent change. But if it's not optimal for society and someone wants to change it, you have an idealistic legislator who wants to change something. I ran into this a couple of years ago, getting a legislator to carry a bill for me. I can give you the example later if you're interested. And we just ran into a buzzsaw of special interest power. And basically, the groups, these outside groups, spend so much both lobbying off cycle. They've got a full-time team up there writing legislation, taking people out to lunch, hanging out, just kind of monitoring and spending a lot of time enmeshed within the legislative world. And they spend so much money around elections that it does. I think for many of these legislators, it just becomes a calculus of like, why would I take on changing the status quo if it means that somebody's going to dump $1 million in negative ads against me and I'm going to lose my seat in 2 years anyway? And that becomes the calculus. And it's not clear enough to the voters why change doesn't happen. And I really believe that's the primary mechanism. There may be other things that happen that I'm not aware of. But I tried to change this construction defect law because it's having an impact on our ability to get condos built. And that matters because condos are the most accessible form of home ownership. And basically, Sacramento didn't want to touch it because it was kind of like, well, the trial lawyers are really powerful and they've sort of already come to an understanding with the building community. And there's just kind of like everybody's happy. Right. Like, don't touch it.
Yeah. I'm sympathetic. What you're saying in California is complicated because it's like, there are all sorts of unions that have become extremely powerful in a way, sometimes more powerful than sort of the big business groups.
Oh, by spending the most.
Right.
But yeah.
I guess I'm
focused on Washington.
I'm more incensed on the sort of like, I'm going to cozy up to Trump specifically, and then he's going to use the antitrust authority or whatever to let me, Netflix can't buy my
so let's talk about that. I think what is really, I think it's incredibly concerning. I think, unfortunately, tech didn't engage in politics for so long, which was probably a good thing. And I think the culture for a long time was avoidance. Tech was like, hey, we're out here in California. Let us do our thing. Leave us alone. There was this very libertarian undercurrent that still, I think, largely exists in Silicon Valley. And but then as tech became more powerful and government started to engage, suddenly I think they realized how to play the game, and now they've figured it out at a scale and in a way that is more powerful than almost any other industry. And it is concerning. I think the question. One, I don't think tech's monolithic. I think we have to take it sub-industry by sub-industry. So like crypto, you make a great point, right? There are other elements of technology like, I don't know, solar and batteries. Like that's tech, but it's a different kind of tech that I'm less worried about.
And the startup economy generally. Like, I believe in that philosophy.
Yeah,
like, I think that is, it's great. It's like create new businesses. Now, sometimes they're worried about regulation on stuff like AI because, regulations can protect the big businesses and hurt the small ones. But generally, I think, the startup agenda is good for America by and large.
Yeah, I think so. I think our entrepreneurship is a real strength and all that creativity and dynamism. And we want to be at the forefront.
What do you make, Congressman Ro Khanna has clearly made the calculation that tech is very unpopular. Like, you're running for governor, not so friendly. Like, I've learned a lot from tech. And I don't know, what do you make of his political calculus here? Or this is just true belief? Or what do you make of his sort of turn against the hometown industry?
Yeah, it's certainly noteworthy. I try not to spend a lot of time serving
as
political pundit. I mean, I've openly and publicly disagreed with the Congress member on his position on the wealth tax, and I already gave you my main reasons why. Really, just the unintended consequences of it.
It's not just wealth tax; it's like everything. He feels like he's looking for a fight.
Yeah, I don't know what else lately.
I don't know. You're I'm not following every tweet. Yeah.
Well, one of the big discussions, and I don't know that he's weighed in on this, but here's another one where I have concerns. There's this question of when does a human need to be in the loop, and at the high level, the idea that a human should be able to review decisions that involve safety, certainly life and death decisions, sounds really good. It makes a lot of sense. But the details really matter. There's a push right now to say, well, the logical extension of that principle is that we should have a human in every autonomous vehicle because you never know. There could be a case where the human needs to override what the vehicle does. Now, the data is already pretty clear from Waymo, for example, that the autonomous vehicles on average are much safer than human drivers. And so there's this big tug of war going on where, largely labor unions who don't want to see job displacement, and they're right to worry about it. I'm worried about job displacement. It's a very legitimate concern, but may lead to a sort of ossification of society, pushing innovation out and say, well, we've got to have a human in every vehicle, which completely defeats the point.
Yeah, I'm a radical on this issue for sure. It's like, what, are we fighting for horse-drawn carriages
Yeah, well,
still?
that's kind of my point.
Once you've spent time in a Waymo, it's like, it works so much better. And as progressives should love them in that, like, cars kill people and they could be central. You could control them more from the government. You could also, you can't go here. You can't go this fast. You can't
I'm the least popular guy on the board of our transit agency because I keep talking about autonomy as part of the future of transit because it frankly will allow us to offer a better service to more people more quickly and more efficiently, and we need to plan for it.
And if you think of the elderly who can't drive, there's so many progressive, the disabled. Sorry, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but...
So that's the optimistic side of tech. I mean, I think with tech, it's always, okay, you get new capabilities that can make life better, and you want to maximize the deployment of new tools that make people's lives better while minimizing whether it's privacy risk or the loss of agency or the political corruption, to your point. And I don't think there's an easy answer though to how to I mean, regulation is really the primary answer to curbing the excesses of tech.
Do you think...
But we have to get it right because we could also just push it to other, not just other states, but other countries.
This core question. Right? I mean, at once it's like you were saying, I don't know, California is one of the top 10. If it was, its own country, it'd be what?
Number 4 or 5.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a big economy.
By GDP. So by that argument, it's like, take some responsibility, regulate, come up with your own regulations. This is a big place with a lot of people. We have our own views. And obviously there have been I think auto regulations, right? With fuel economy, there have been areas where California is.
Yeah, particularly on environmental policy, we've often been out in front.
So how much do you think California should embrace that when it comes to the tech industry versus taking a posture of these need to be federal because you're going to scare out industry from our state?
Yeah, again, this is going to be an unsatisfying answer. I think it depends on the type of regulation. I am generally a believer in the notion of decentralization. And, we're not France where everything emanates from Paris. We have 50 states. Those states are laboratories. I have pushed back against, there was a bill somebody proposed that would have allowed every city in California to regulate autonomous vehicles, and I was very much against that for obvious reasons. But when it comes to this evolving policy landscape, given how close we are to what's changing in California in this area, I think it makes sense for us to be able to regulate. I mean, we need to figure out how to protect our children. I think we've made a lot of progress. Now you're seeing cell phones being banned in schools, which I think is a good thing.
Right. It's crazy as a new parent, just the idea. It's just like everybody in tech knows about the danger of phones. That's the other irony. It's like I feel like people in the industry are like, I don't know, don't let my kids on the phone.
No, I think that's right. I think people in tech are less likely to have their kids using devices all day, or if at all, right? I mean, we're pretty anti-screen in our home and really very cognizant of the risks. So I think protecting our children's a no-brainer. I would not want to wait for the federal government to figure something out. If a state wants to experiment with basic, privacy, safety, we just passed a bunch of changes, policies in San Jose that really limit how we use our license plate readers. So on the one hand, automated license plate readers are a very powerful law enforcement tool. On the other hand, we don't want to create a we don't do facial recognition. We don't want to create a surveillance state, some sort of big brother where we've stored all of your movements for all time, and now we can go back and I think it'd be really creepy to kind of know everything about where you've ever gone. So we delete all the data every 30 days. So it's really useful in the short run if there's a crime to be able to say, well, we need to respond and figure out who did this and apprehend the person and have enough evidence. But on the other hand, we're really limiting what we collect, how we collect it. We're very transparent. We tell people what we collect and why, and we have very strict data retention policies, meaning we delete the data regularly. So we're regulating tech at the local level. It depends on the tool.
Right. And I mean, that's the answer that makes sense, that it depends on the issue and you don't want to like give away the total authority, but you sort of have to take a balanced approach. And on AI specifically, like, are you using language models? Like you said you were enthusiastic about autonomous, but the sort of other pieces of what's happening in AI, are you a big user? And like, what's your view of, I don't know, the rate of progress and how much this is going to be a concern for government for the next governor?
Yeah, I do use models. I wouldn't say I'm a power user, but I certainly find that there's a different and very meaningful use case over and above search, obviously. We've created a custom GPT around our budget process where we've uploaded past budget documents and then generated insights in a way that would have taken a lot of manual work. I'm especially excited, though, about how city workers are using these tools. We have city employees who have gone through our AI upskilling course, built a custom GPT for whatever their job function is. A couple that come to mind are one woman in our Department of Transportation was applying for a grant, put various documents into a GPT and refined her application. And then when that grant, it was a federal grant that the Trump administration then basically invalidated, because she had this tool and it had ingested all of this information, she was able to quickly pivot and apply for a different grant at the state level, and she secured dollars, but she never would have made the deadline had she needed to basically like manually start from scratch again. And then we've got somebody in our IT department who took our 311 data, and as people are calling in for potholes and graffiti and different service calls, one of the biggest categories, of course, is other, where it's not not well classified. He basically built a classifier that saves 500 hours a year of what was previously a lot of manual classification. So I think there are a lot of interesting applications of these tools. I generally think, though, that if we invest in people and their training and education and expose them to these tools, particularly at a young age, and give them some guardrails and the confidence to experiment, they'll figure out how to adapt the tools. And you may see tasks automated, but most of the jobs we do inside City Hall, at least, are complex enough that I don't think they're going to be eliminated. I think they'll be enhanced by AI.
Do you think there are any circumstances where states should embrace what the New Jersey gasoline attendant model, where it's like, we need to protect jobs in this industry because things are being disrupted too fast? Like, are jobs alone a reason to slow the pace of AI development or to sort of make rules?
I'm hesitant because I don't know at that point, as you create that constituency around jobs that otherwise wouldn't exist, how you make the decision, if ever, to eliminate them. And so I think that in the long run, it is better to allow innovation, though we do have to buffer. So really the question is, we have to buffer people from the impacts of technological change. Technological change generally leads us to a place where there are a number of benefits, but the transition is really hard. So the question is just how to best buffer people. One is you try to freeze things in place and say, these jobs have to exist even if they're no longer necessary or very productive. We're just going to create the jobs because we want people to be working. I feel like that kind of devalues those workers in that work, and eventually it may kind of seem like a farce, and they may feel like, why am I doing this thing that I don't need to do? So I'm a little skeptical of that approach. I think another approach, of course, is a UBI, although that also there's no work involved with that, right? So that's another way of sort of protecting people, but it doesn't particularly value work. And then there's my preference, and I would hope that this would manage most of the transition, even if you need some of the other two categories, is to invest early and often in the training, the skills, the access to tools, and allow people themselves to create new jobs, new companies, evolve their existing jobs and become more productive. Now, that's idealistic, but I do see evidence of that happening. We're doing that at City Hall. We have 1,000 workers going through our AI upskilling course, and they're changing their jobs by applying these tools in new ways. And that's actually what happened with past information technology. We started using smartphones before that, PCs, the Word suite, the Office suite. I mean, it's, we started using Excel spreadsheets. Most of those did not dramatically destroy jobs so much as change the way that jobs were done.
Right. I mean, I feel like one of my more AI-pilled concerns is just, you hear like Sam Altman talk about it, and just this access to AI and sort of intelligence is going to be another sort of dividing line in who has sort of capacity.
So I'll make a point on that, which it's only a starting point, and we have a lot of work to do here. But last year we launched AI for All, and San Jose became the first city in the world to get 3 of the leading AI companies, so Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI, to collaborate, and that we created a portal through our website. So we have this lander on our website through our library, where anyone with a library card, so that's 700,000 people in San Jose, get access to the tools, training, including self-guided tutorials. We're doing some in-person trainings. And then there are some licenses for unique courses that in some cases would be paid. And so we're trying to get these companies to start opening up more of the tools and training for anyone through our library system.
I'm going back to the Trump thing because honestly, I feel like I agree with you and sort of tonally on a lot of it. But the one I'm concerned about is just, if we become more anti-democratic on the federal level, like, are you?
What do you mean more anti-democratic?
Just like if we don't have free election, or
I see.
Not anti-democratic like the Democratic Party doesn't
more like
succeed. But if we become more authoritarian,
like
California in particular has an important role to play in like standing up for the American like democratic project. Yeah. And what makes you feel like you're prepared to take on that mantle?
Well, even as mayor, we've sued the Trump administration. I mean, we've joined a number of lawsuits, and we've passed local regulations, much more limited than what I think we can do at the state level. But there's no doubt California has a critical role to play in offering a counterpoint, in fact, showing that our values work in practice and are distinct from and better than what Trump is offering, but also using the power of our legal team. Our attorney general has done a great job of really prosecuting the case against Trump's overreach and abuse of power, from withholding funds to the birthright citizenship issue to reproductive rights and so forth. And so I think continuing to use the law, the bully pulpit, and the power of a better example, I suppose you could say, are some of the tools in our toolkit. But I think there are limits to the rhetorical game. It's as important as it is. I don't think we're going to out-meme Donald Trump or that we're going to beat him on X. I think it's going to be ultimately in the courts and in delivering better outcomes and getting people to actually vote with their feet and want to come back to blue states.
What is your path to being governor? Like, what can people watching this podcast do to support the campaign?
So I'm at mahanforcalifornia.com is the website. You can find me all over social media, as you would expect.
Which is your, I mean, Mamdani, I feel like you won on TikTok, or like, have you figured out, and you're a guy, like the social media stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what do you feel like you've found your platform?
I think Mamdani would say that he won in a lot of different ways. I think social media was part of it. He really highlighted the door knocking.
I know they do, but like the video, I mean,
I think the videos were powerful.
The videos were good.
Don't underestimate. He also spent more on television than Cuomo, so it wasn't just a single. All campaigns are multi-channel, and they try to reach people from every angle. And that's not to take anything away from what he did. I mean, I think the way that they used short form video is pretty inspired. I think it's very powerful, and we're doing our best to kind of adapt to those mediums and find our own footing there. It won't, my policies are not the same, obviously. I'm much more centrist, and so but we're the medium itself, the media are quite powerful. So yeah, people can find me on Instagram and X and TikTok. The election, the primary is June 2nd, and in California, thankfully we have an open top two primary, meaning whether you're a Democrat, independent, or Republican, you can still vote for me. If you want to see common sense leadership that actually is focused on solving our biggest problems in California and providing that very real counterpoint to the Trump administration, that's what I'm all about. And we've had a great start. I only jumped in a few weeks ago. I'm starting with low name ID.
Were you late to it? Or
I was late. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, late, I guess, is very subjective, but I jumped in later than I was the last major candidate to jump in.
Were you still sort of deciding, or?
To be perfectly honest, I wasn't planning to do it, at least last year. I love being mayor. I've got a great job, and my wife loves her day job. We have 2 little kids. They're happy in their schools and on their soccer teams. Our plan, if you will, was not to try to go move to Sacramento and take on this task. But I was watching the race last year, which is when all of the other candidates got in. And as we got to the beginning of this year, there just felt to me to be a huge void in the race. I actually got home early January from a transit board meeting, and my wife looked at me, it was probably about 10:30 at night, and she just looked at me and said, I think you need to get in this race, which was, my jaw hit the floor because we both know what that means. I mean, I've been on the road almost nonstop. It's a big state. Here I am with you out in New York.
Yeah, we're in New York City right now.
All over the place. And we have little kids. So it's been hard on our family. But, Sylvia, my wife, like me, is concerned. We're worried about this rising populism on the right, the reaction on the left, and this sort of people looking for easy answers rather than a real clarity around the limitations we face, the real trade-offs we face, what's realistic, what we should expect from our government. We need to rebuild trust in government. And I don't think we do that by being the loudest, the most sensational, the most gratuitous in our politics. We've increased trust in City Hall in San Jose in my time as mayor by 40%.
Wow.
By delivering results for people, by speeding up the buses, filling the potholes, reducing homelessness, reducing crime, cleaning up the streets, speeding up permitting. You get government to start working again, and you take that oxygen away from anti-democratic, again, lowercase d, democratic impulses on the right and the left. And so that's what motivated me to jump in. And frankly, if you look at the rest of the field in California right now, the 2 leading Republicans are going as hard right as they can, catering to Trump and trying to be the standard bearer of the MAGA movement.
I don't know.
Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco are like,
Hilton's like a TV sort of.
He was
character.
A Fox News, personality.
Not the main one even, sorry.
And then the other leading Dems, at least up to this point, have been basically just trying to be the most anti-Trump possible, which I understand. I mean, I agree with them philosophically and say many of the same things. But if that's your whole message and you just know what you're against, or you, I think, incorrectly try to pretend that Trump is the reason that California is struggling, which is just not, it's not Trump. And it's, frankly, it's not even I don't even think you can blame tech for our problems. I'm not saying that tech has been perfect or shouldn't do more. Believe me, tech should, and it should be regulated, and all those things are true, and Trump is awful, and that's true. But none of that's like the reason that our public schools are underperforming for low-income students, or we've increased spending by 75% and homelessness hasn't gone down, or that crime is what it is. Like, these are just not connected, and it's so much easier to just say, oh, it's Trump, or it's the billionaires, or for the guys on the right to say it's these failed Democrats. We need to start getting more specific about what are the actual policies that are in the way or that need to be changed to make our lives better.
Mayor Mahan, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you. That's the Newcomer podcast. Thanks so much to Matt Mahan for coming out to New York and recording with me. I think he might have been in town for the Daily Show, but happy to have him on the Newcomer podcast while he was here. I thought it had a lot of fun. Like, comment, subscribe. As you know, this is a growing YouTube channel. I also have another podcast called The Cerebral Valley Show with Max Child and James Wilsterman. I think it's pretty funny. It's a very different vibe. It's, a host show. We're doing power rankings. We want to be the ringer. If TBPN is Sports Center for tech, we want to be the ringer for tech. So, this is hard-hitting interviews. That's fun chat show. Together you can have, your vegetables and your cake. Anyway, you can find me on Substack at newcomer.co, and we'll see you with some great episodes coming up. I'm excited at the pipeline of guests we have coming. And please comment, suggest people we should have on the show. I miss getting sass. People were sassing me more in the beginning. I haven't improved that much. So give me your feedback, and thanks for following this growing channel.